Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. All right, guys, we got a really interesting guest today. Today, we have Patrick Maclellan, who is a managing partner over at Merchant Cost Consulting. Patrick has been in the payments industry for over 9 years, and his extensive experience in the merchant industry, he was determined to bring transparency for merchants with their credit card processors. As the director of business development, Patrick creates strategic relationships, helping businesses save millions on their merchant fees. He's always striving to help business owners get a better understanding of the complex industry and to help them save money along the way. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Dr. Costas. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to have you. I can sense that Boston accent. It's pretty strong there, buddy. It's okay though.
Try to get rid of it, but sometimes it comes out.
No, it's very endearing. It's very endearing. It's very Marky Mark like.
That's I'll take that as a compliment.
For sure, man. All right. So you have a very interesting business model. I'd love to dig into it. So merchant cost consulting isn't an actual merchant. You guys don't actually do the processing yourself. You do the negotiating on the back end. Can you tell me how it works?
Absolutely. So yeah, we're not a processor. We're strictly on the cost reduction and consulting side.
Okay.
So helping businesses and practices to reduce their merchant fees without actually having to make any changes on their end. So whether there's a software integration, whether they have a POS system set up or a terminal in-house, everything on the operation side would stay the same for the practice. We use our data, analytics, and industry knowledge to renegotiate as well as optimize their current pricing with their current vendor, just making sure they're paying the absolute lowest rates and fees in the industry without having to change anything.
Awesome. So I'm assuming, and I am a novice, I'm actually quite clueless as far as the merchant services industry, but I mean, if there is a company like yours that is dedicated just to negotiating on behalf of, the business owner, there must be a significant amount of margin in what they do.
Definitely. Merchant services is one of those back-end expenses, and these processors make it very convoluted. So if you're taking a look at your merchant processing statement, there's so many different line items when it comes to accepting debit and credit cards from your patients or your customers. So we come in and try to bring that transparency to the industry, helping businesses get a better understanding of what they're actually paying when it comes to accepting these cards from patients and seeing if we can help them save money along the way. There's just a lot of hidden fees, surcharging going on in the industry. So again, that's where we try to bring that education aspect to it, and just making sure that we're helping practices to improve their bottom line.
So are you guys agnostic, or do you have like your favorite merchant services people that you recommend?
No, we're agnostic. Yeah, we help with whoever practice or business may be using as their current merchant service processor. We're typically able to work with them. So yeah, we can work with whoever they're currently processing with.
Okay. So off the top of your head, could you give us just some examples of some hidden fees that we are not aware of as just the typical business owner that's focused on, doing the thing and running the business, and not just like taking for granted that their merchant services fee is just normal and we just kind of accept it? What's hidden in there?
Yeah, so there's so many different, it depends on the processor, but there's a lot of surcharging that goes on in the industry, especially if there's a specific software integration with your processor. And then there's a lot more surcharging that goes on if you're accepting, say, primarily rewards cards or business cards. And let's face it, nowadays, a lot of people do have rewards attached to their credit or debit card.
Yeah.
They want their cash back or their flyer miles. So there's a lot of hidden fees that go into that. There's a lot of unnecessary monthly fees as well. So things like PCI compliance, which stands for Payment Card Industry. And what that entails is completing a survey annually. And it's just one of those fees that these processors tack on to make themselves more profitable. and they don't really help the business in terms of becoming PCI compliant and helping them complete this survey. So it can turn into, anywhere from $100 to $200 added on to their merchant service fees per month.
Wow.
Yeah, we try to point that out for them, helping them with the compliance, removing those surcharges, and really any of those just unnecessary fees, because some of these processors are good at hiding, padding, and manipulating some of the their fees.
Got it. So is there some sort of a software that goes through and identifies the opportunities for us to save money, or do you guys go through it line item by line item, like human to human negotiation, et cetera?
So we do it both, actually. So we do have an operations team that goes through it line item by line item, going through with a fine tooth comb to see exactly where those errors or overcharging is probably occurring. And then we use an AI tool to plug and play. So we're able to take the processing statement, actually plug it into the tool, and that will kind of give us some feedback as to where those overcharging or red flags are occurring as well.
Got it. Got it. So I guess the big question in my head is like, these merchant some of these merchant services companies are pretty big, right? So what motivation do they have to deal with a company like yours? Why can't they just say, no, we're big, we don't care, we're not gonna get on the phone with you and decrease our fees to this little dental office? What is their motivation to work with you?
It's really for them. Yes, some of these processors are massive, but they obviously want to keep their book of business and maintain their current clients, because that's how they stay big. But once a firm like us, whether if it's a consulting firm or a third party comes in, it's almost like they're getting their hand caught in the cookie jar. They know exactly where those overcharges are taking place, and they know how easily it is for a practice to switch to another processor to get better rates and fees. So once we kind of bring that to light for the business and having the conversations with the processor, 99% of the time they're willing to make some sort of adjustments to the pricing, because we know what that fair market value is and what they actually should be paying. So once we kind of bring that to light, they're at least willing to hear us out and make those proper adjustments.
So have you guys ever run into a situation where they just say, no, absolutely not? You go all the way up the chain and they're like, no, I'm not gonna negotiate. What do you tell your client if that happens?
We want to be as transparent as well. So when we're having those conversations, we want to say, hey, we'll take a look at their recent processing statement to see what those potential savings look like. And during our initial audit, we'll see if they're competitively priced. And we want to say, hey, XYZ business, you're actually priced competitively with your processor. There's probably not a lot of wiggle room for savings, but we can try to go to the processor and see what can be done. Sometimes these processors, they won't adjust the pricing because their current pricing, the rates and fees are actually competitive, and we'd have to agree. But if there are other overcharges, or if the business is just paying an exorbitant amount in merchant fees, like I said, 99% of the time they're willing to make some adjustments. We haven't had an instance where the processor is just unwilling to do anything if they're paying in excess of what they should be.
Sure. Okay. Got it. All right. So I guess it would be helpful. I'm going to ask this from both sides, but it would be helpful for me. I like to speak on behalf of the listeners and try to put myself in their heads as well. How do these places make money? How do merchant services, where's the juice there? Like, aside from these surcharges and whatnot, like, do they take a percentage of the actual interest rate? Where's the money making opportunity for the merchant services industry?
Great question. So there are charges that are assessed from Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. And
Okay.
whoever the issuing bank is, so who's ever giving that card, so say you get your debit card from a Visa, Bank of America card, they have their own rates and fees. So they're assessing some of the rates and fees that the practice would be paying. And then there's a markup on top of that. So it's going to be a percentage as well as a per transaction fee.
Okay.
where they're making their money. And then there could be, again, those surcharges as well as the added monthly fees where they're making their money. But primarily, a majority of it's going to be coming from a percentage as well as a per transaction fee.
Got it. Okay. So what could that look like? What is the range? Say, a healthy dental practice is, say, doing $1 million, just for easy math. A healthy dental practice is doing $1 million in revenue. And let's just say $600,000 of that revenue is coming in via credit card. One of the four major ones that you just talked about. What are we looking at as far as a range of merchant services fees for, say, $600,000?
So it's when we typically, before someone like us comes and takes a look at their processing, we're typically seeing their fees are going to be about 3%. Anything above that, you're paying way too much on your processing fees.
Okay.
So on that 600,000, total of about $18,000 would be paid in those merchant service fees. What we're able to do, and if the practice is already paying close to 2%, if not, or below that, then your pricing is typically competitive. But anything above that 2% mark, that's typically where there should be some room for savings, where the practice just may be overpaying in some areas.
Okay, got it. How about organizations, these newer ones like Apple Pay or Stripe? Is there a merchant fee associated with those types of companies as well?
Yeah, so there definitely is. So it just like any other processor, there's still, you're going to have the charge from the credit card brands themselves. So Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. And then there's going to be a markup where they're making their money as well. So same, just like any other processor.
Are they about the same in comparison to the traditional merchant services company, or are they less or more, or about the same?
Right about the same, actually.
Okay.
Stripe is definitely, they're a little bit newer in the payment industry, a little more transparent, but because of some of their features and their capabilities, they may be charging a little bit more for their pricing. They're not going to be the cheapest option, but they're relatively in the same ballpark as most other processors.
Okay. All right. So I got to ask the question, how do you guys make money?
Yeah, so we're strictly a contingency-based firm. The only
Okay.
way that we're compensated is by sharing in the savings that we're able to obtain for a business.
Okay.
So we would go in and say, hey, Dr. Costas, your practice is currently paying 3% right now. And then we would go to your processor, do the legwork on behalf of the practice to get it down to 2%. And then we would say, month over month, we would monitor your statement to make sure that those savings were actually put into place. And we'll show you exactly where the savings occurred. So we would list out each and every line item as to where the savings came from. But you can see that you're now paying 2%, and we would just share in that total savings, typically a 50-50 split of whatever savings we're able to obtain. But we don't charge any other consulting fees, hourly fees, beginning fees, or anything like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So walk us through the user experience then. So your website is merchantcostconsulting.com. What do people see? Is there like some sort of an intro video? Do they fill out a form? How do you start the process, and what does the process from beginning to end look like?
Yeah, exactly. They go to merchantcostconsulting.com, and there's a section where they can fill in their information and upload a recent processing statement.
Okay.
We can receive that. We'll do an initial audit. So we'll go through everything with that fine-tooth comb. We'll put it in our AI tool, and we'll put together an analysis to see what those potential savings look like and present that to the client. From there, if the savings are significant enough and the business wants to move forward, they would sign. We have a one-page engagement letter on our end. We like to keep things very simple. We don't have any fine print. There's no terms and conditions. It's a simple one-pager that states the exact terms. Once that engagement letter is signed, that gives us permission to contact the processor on their behalf. And we do, get our hands dirty, do the renegotiation and optimization on their behalf, and make sure they're paying the lowest rates and fees in the industry. But as far as the business or the practice goes, there's no legwork on their end whatsoever besides uploading those statements.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So I always like, from an entrepreneur's standpoint, I always like to hear like the history as one of the partners and founding members that you are. Tell us about the history. How old is your company? How big is your team? What's the genesis of how you guys started this thing in the first place?
Yeah, definitely. So we've been in business for almost 7 years now. Me and my
Awesome.
team, we used to work for one of the processors here in Boston,
Mm,
and we learned the ins and the outs of the industry. Kind of the good, bad, and the ugly, really.
sure.
But we also saw that there's a lot of unethical sales tactics that are used, a lot of deception in some of the pricing. So that's where we saw it wasn't just happening with the processor we were working for, it was across the industry. So we saw how these processors were taking advantage of these businesses. And that's why we decided to start on the consulting side, again, bringing that education aspect, just because it is that back end expense. And I was unaware that when I was making a practice that a business even had to pay a certain percentage.
Yeah.
Kind of a simple money transfer. But to learn all of that and just to learn about how it can really impact a business's bottom line and their profitability. So that's where we saw that and turn it into a business opportunity. We're not reinventing the wheel on our end, but just because of our experience in the industry, that's where we saw that kind of that ability to go help these businesses. So it's definitely a niche industry and what we're doing. So yeah, for the past 7 years, we've been helping any type of business save money on these fees, as long as they're accepting debit and credit cards as a form of payment. And we've had a lot of success in the dental and orthodontic industry, just because of the certain processors that they're working with and those software integrations. We're seeing a lot of that overcharging. So we're a team of about 10 right now. On the sales and operational side, we're a small team here in Boston, but we've made a pretty good footprint in the dental and orthodontic space, helping the practices just with whatever merchant service needs they may have.
That's awesome. So are you the branch of the company that deals with us crazy dentists, or is there a whole team for us?
No, I'm the primary one. They kind of does that. So I've obviously, you guys are impossible to get on the phone. You have like gatekeepers, the office managers that
Yeah. It's
they'll,
it's many layers of gatekeepers. Yes, for sure.
yeah, but which I can understand. I absolutely can understand, because once when we're contacting a processor, it's just an issue we have. Most practices think we're a processor and we're getting them to change over. So I guess that's a hurdle that we have to jump over and distinguish ourselves about, hey, we're not a processor. We're just looking to help save money without you having to actually change anything, because I know practices get solicited all the time from these processors.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're on the podcast, because this is the nice way into the side door, right? You get all the way around all of the gatekeepers, because we only have people on that are providing value to our listeners. So this is a company that we believe in, and you guys do provide value with, and there's only an upside, right? Whenever there's a contingency model, that means that you're not making money unless we're making money. So it's very, very little risk, as long as it doesn't take a long time for the process, as far as, time away from patients and doing our high value activities. That's the question that we always need to ask.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to take that away. We want to make sure this is not a time consuming process for the practice owner or anyone in the practice. This is actually something, it's a quick and easy communication with them. And we want to take merchant services off of their plate so they can worry about the other day-to-day operations of the practice. But it's also being as transparent as possible, because we want to show them the savings and show them that, until they actually realize the savings, that's only when we ask for our compensation for our efforts. So we want to make sure it's a win-win across the board.
For sure. I might be putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I'd love to hear just like maybe a case study. Like when you start talking about 3% being high, and then 2% being average, and then 1% being the delta, and then we're splitting 1% with you. I can see the way that dentist heads work. It's like, oh man, so you're telling me that I have to sign up with you guys and maybe save 0.5%. What could that impact look like as far as the bottom line?
Yeah. So if you're processing $100,000 during a given month in your total credit card processing sales, let's say if we're taking that from the 3% down to the 2%, which in most cases does occur. We've seen percentages before doing our initial audit as high as 5 or 6%.
Dang.
Just because those added surcharges, and we just see that business owners, they just think that's the price that they have to pay. It's for accepting those cards. So just for an example, there's a real life example as well, is getting that percentage below 2%, which would equate to more than $1,000 in monthly savings. So if assuming $500 plus per month is going to move the needle for some practices, and I'd say that's average savings for the practice. So again, with no legwork and just it's found money, $500 per month being put back into their pocket, hopefully our services are beneficial for them.
That's awesome. Yeah. $500 is a decent car payment. So, all right. So when you guys negotiate, we get that $1,000 per month savings. You get 5, we get 5. Is that an ongoing fee? How does the fee breakdown work? Is that in perpetuity?
So we do ask for an engagement typically of 36 months, and we have that in place to A, protect ourselves as a business, but B, you're also getting the monitoring services to make sure that those savings are actually put into place.
Mm-hmm.
We do see that processors like to increase their fees every 2 to 3 times per year, just like your cable bill or your insurance bill. All of a sudden, you sign up, you get these great introductory rates. 6 months later, you're paying almost 2x. So merchant services is just like that, almost on steroids. So with the monitoring, we're making sure that month over month, you're paying the absolute lowest, hopefully below that 2%. And when those increases occur, we're going to contact the processor again to get those increases removed as well as refunded. So that's why we asked for the 36 months, just because, let's just say, Dr. Costas, if we were to help practice, and after month 2 or 3, you could just say, hey, Patrick, thanks for your time and effort, but we're just going to keep 100% of the savings ourselves. And yes, which is great. And I understand that as business owner that you would want a majority of those savings, if not all of them, but 6 months, 8 months down the line, those rates are just going to go right back up to what they were before, if not more than what you were paying before our services. So that's why we want to make sure that we're providing value, again, taking anything merchant services related off of their plate.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, dentists are very aware of this. We have this thing called price creep with our disposables. And a lot of the sales reps will say, okay, I want to match this other supplier to gain your business. So they match your beat and they come in with this great new formulary, and you're saving a ton of money. And you take your eye off the ball for sometimes 3 months, usually around 6 to 8 months. And all the prices were back up to where they were before they made these sweeping changes. And it's a very, very reliable strategy for these sales reps to do that. So I can imagine that it's rampant in the merchant services industry as well.
Definitely. Same exact thing. The old bait and switch tactic, which
Yep.
is notorious in payment processing industry.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So how do people engage? I would love if you could just repeat one more time your contact information, maybe personally and for your company. I think this is a no-brainer for anybody listening out there.
Yeah, if you want to learn a little bit more, you can go to www.merchantcostconsulting.com. There's a lot of great information on there with some video tutorials about the process. You can contact myself directly. My email is patrick@merchantcostconsulting.com, or you can call me directly at 508-733-7622 if you have any questions or around merchant services and want to learn a little bit more.
Awesome, man. Hey, really appreciate your time today, Patrick. Enjoy this week's football game. Who are the Patriots playing this week? I don't even know.
Geez, I don't even know either. I should probably figure that. No, they have Pittsburgh Steelers, so
Okay, nice.
you never know. You never know who how that one's gonna go.
For sure. All right, it was great getting to know you. I hope that this stimulates some interest amongst our audience, and we'll talk to you hopefully soon.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Costas. Really appreciate it.
You too, my friend. Ladies and
Care.
gentlemen, Patrick Maclellan from Merchant Cost Consulting.